Okay, let's unpack this. Today, we're embarking on a fascinating journey back over 2.5 millennia, right to the vibrant and complex heart of ancient India.
Hmm.
Our mission is to explore the extraordinary life of Siddhartha Gautama and the foundational ideas that blossomed into, well, one of the world's most enduring philosophies, Buddhism.
Yeah.
We're going to peel back the layers of history, delve into the incredible personal quest of one man, and uncover the profound wisdom that emerged from it.
And this isn't merely a historical recounting, is it? I mean, this deep dive is really about unearthing the core insights, the kind of revolutionary shifts that sprang from Siddhartha's profound quest for truth.
Right.
It's a journey that continues to shape millions of lives globally. What's truly fascinating here, I think, is how relevant, how deeply resonant some of these ancient insights still feel in our, incredibly fast-paced modern world.
They really do.
They offer a kind of timeless lens through which to view human experience.
I find that compelling. Our specific mission for you, the listener, in this deep dive is to distill the most important nuggets of knowledge regarding the historical and philosophical origins of Buddhism.
Hmm.
We want to understand the intricate socio-religious context that Siddhartha was born into, grasp his pivotal moments of realization, and fully appreciate the core tenets he ultimately discovered.
And why they were so radical.
Exactly. We'll explore why these ideas were so radical for their time, challenging deeply ingrained norms, and critically, what they continue to mean for us today. To truly grasp the fertile ground from which Buddhism began to sprout, we absolutely need to transport ourselves to India in the 6th century BCE. This wasn't a unified nation as we might think of it today. Rather, it was, well, a dynamic, fragmented landscape.
That's a crucial distinction.
Yeah.
The 6th century BCE in India is often described as Madai Sal, a term referring to this very complex mosaic of, evolving natural conditions, burgeoning urban centers, and deeply ingrained cultural and social structures. We're talking particularly about the Northeast region, which was then dominated by the entrenched Brahmanic culture and the Vedic religion.
Right.
At this time, the ancient sacred texts, known as the Vedas, were not just religious scriptures. They were the ultimate authority, dictating everything from intricate religious practices to the very fabric of societal norms and individual roles.
So when we talk about Vedic rituals, what did that actually look like for the average person living them? Was this a religion accessible to everyone, or was there a kind of a gatekeeper?
Oh, it was far from universally accessible. The Vedic rituals were incredibly complex, often stretching over days or even weeks, involving elaborate chants, specific offerings, precise ceremonial actions, and critically, they were largely the exclusive domain of the Brahmin or priestly class.
Only the priests.
Primarily, yes. These Brahmins were considered the sole intermediaries between humans and the divine. They were the ones who could correctly perform these intricate rites to appease deities and ensure cosmic order, basically.
Yeah.
This exclusivity meant that the vast majority of society, the common people, those outside the priestly class, felt largely excluded from meaningful religious experience.
So they couldn't really participate.
They were often just observers, not active participants, and this created a widespread spiritual dissatisfaction, a feeling of being disconnected from their own spiritual path, yearning for something more personal.
So if I'm understanding this, you had a society where a select few held the keys to spiritual fulfillment, leaving a profound sense of yearning, almost a spiritual vacuum, for more accessible paths, for something that spoke directly to the individual, rather than requiring complex, expensive rituals mediated by others.
Precisely. This spiritual exclusion fostered a profound hunger for alternative ways to connect with meaning and purpose. And if spiritual exclusion wasn't enough, this was compounded by an extremely rigid social hierarchy that governed nearly every aspect of daily life.
Oh, yeah.
This wasn't just about social status. It determined your entire existence.
Right, the infamous caste system. Many of our listeners will have heard of it, but can you really break down its practical and, well, psychological impact for us?
Of course, society was rigidly stratified into distinct varnas, or social classes, with practically no individual mobility between them. It was very fixed.
Fixed how?
Well, at the very pinnacle were the brahmanas, the priests, holding immense spiritual authority, responsible for upholding religious traditions and performing sacred rites. Below them were the kshatriyas, the warriors and rulers, whose duty it was to govern, protect the land, maintain order.
Got it.
Then came the vaishyas, the merchants, farmers, and traders, who formed the economic backbone of society. And at the bottom, the Shudras, the laborers and servants who performed the essential, often menial tasks that supported the other classes.
That sounds incredibly restrictive, not just religiously, as you mentioned, but socially, profoundly so. Your destiny was literally determined at birth.
It was. This rigid system meant that an individual's birth determined their entire life's trajectory. Their profession, their marriage prospects, their social standing, even their religious obligations, and access to spiritual knowledge.
Wow.
Imagine being born into a role from which there was virtually no escape, regardless of your personal aspirations, talents, or efforts.
Yeah, that's tough.
This created deep dissatisfaction, especially among those who began to question the very meaning and ultimate purpose of life amidst such clear social injustice and the strict adherence to these rituals that, for many, offered little personal spiritual fulfillment. People were searching for answers, for a deeper understanding that transcended their predetermined roles, a system that felt fundamentally unfair.
So it's within this fertile ground of pervasive social tension, widespread spiritual yearning, and a deep-seated discontent with the established order that new philosophical schools began to sprout, offering alternative explanations and paths. We see the emergence of movements like Jainism around this time, for example. And it's into this charged atmosphere, this very specific historical moment of profound change and seeking that Siddhartha Gautama was born. This backdrop is absolutely crucial to understanding the radical nature of what was to come.
Indeed, it highlights just how profoundly revolutionary Siddhartha's teachings would eventually become. They weren't just new ideas appearing in a vacuum, they were direct, almost audacious, challenge to the established order, a system that privileged birthright and ritual.
A completely different way.
Completely. His path offered a deeply individual and experiential approach to truth, a stark contrast to the rigid hierarchy and externalized practices that dominated the landscape.
And that leads us perfectly into the early life of Siddhartha himself. His birth is a narrative rich with both compelling historical details and, well, deep-seated legend, making it an incredibly potent and meaningful story.
It truly is. While concrete historical records from that precise period are admittedly scarce, early Buddhist scriptures like the Pali Canon, which are foundational texts, provide us with invaluable details about his birth and early life.
Okay.
According to these traditional accounts, Siddhartha Gautama was born around 563 to 483 BCE in Lumbini, a beautiful garden near the border of modern-day Nepal. Tragically, his mother, Maya Devi, passed away shortly after his birth.
Oh, really?
Yes, quite soon after. And he was raised by her sister, Mahapajapati Gautami, who became his foster mother.
But his birth wasn't just seen as a typical biological event, was it? The legends elevate it to something far more significant, almost predestined.
They absolutely do. His birth is portrayed as a cosmic event, imbued with profound spiritual importance, foreshadowing his destiny. Descriptions speak of a white elephant entering his mother's side in a dream, of shining stars aligning, and a profound silence falling over nature, all interpreted as auspicious signs of the immense spiritual enlightenment he was destined to achieve. Even sages, it said, prophesied that he would either become a great universal monarch or a fully awakened Buddha.
A fork in the road right from the start.
Exactly. This deeply ingrained sense of destiny sets the stage for him as an extraordinary individual, someone set apart from the very beginning.
So he wasn't just born, he was destined. And he was born into incredible privilege as the son of King Suddhodana. This privilege, ironically, seems to play a huge, almost counterintuitive role in his story.
It's a fascinating paradox, isn't it? As the prophecy foretold either kingship or spiritual awakening, his father, King Suddhodana, desperately wanted his son to fulfill the destiny of a great temporal ruler.
The king option.
Yes. To ensure this, he went to extraordinary lengths, beyond what most parents could conceive, to shield Siddhartha from any form of suffering or discomfort. The palace itself was meticulously designed as an artificial paradise, a place of utmost comfort, overflowing with luxury, sensual delights, and constant entertainment.
Engineered isolation.
Absolutely. Engineered for complete isolation, ensuring Siddhartha never witnessed old age, sickness, death, or any of life's inherent difficulties.
That's truly fascinating. You have this future spiritual leader, someone whose entire life's work would be dedicated to alleviating suffering, completely insulated from the very things that would eventually drive his quest. It's almost a cruel irony, isn't it?
It truly is. While seemingly idyllic, this complete and absolute isolation, meant to protect his destiny as a king, inadvertently prevented Siddhartha from directly experiencing the true, unvarnished nature of life. He was surrounded by curated beauty, and unending pleasure, meticulously shielded from the realities of existence. This artificial bubble, while intended to protect his destiny as a monarch, unknowingly set the stage for a dramatic and profoundly impactful awakening when the illusion was finally shattered.
And that awakening came, of course, through what are known as the foresights.
Hmm.
This is where it gets really interesting because these weren't just random encounters. They were defining turning points, profound psychological and philosophical shocks that completely shattered his carefully constructed, sheltered view of the world.
Absolutely. These four encounters outside the palace walls, often described as happening during rare excursions, provided the critical psychological and philosophical impetus for him to abandon the immense comforts and privileges he had known his entire life.
So let's walk through them one by one, imagining Siddhartha's perspective. The first encounter was with an old man. What was so profoundly significant about that?
Well, for a young, vibrant prince who had literally never seen physical decline, this was an unimaginable shock. He encountered an old man, frail, bent, with wrinkled skin, struggling to walk.
Just completely alien to him.
Completely. For the first time, he directly saw the inevitable weakening of the body, the reality of aging, and the loss of vitality. This encounter made him realize the transient and fragile nature of his own youth and strength, that his vitality was not permanent, that he too would one day become old. It was a direct, visceral assault on his illusion of eternal vitality and beauty.
A truly jarring introduction to impermanence. Then came the sick person.
That encounter revealed to him that the body is susceptible to agonizing pain and debilitating disease, and thus health itself is not a permanent state. He saw someone writhing in agony, a stark contrast to the perfect, healthy bodies that surrounded him in the palace.
Right.
He witnessed firsthand the physical suffering that was an inherent part of human existence, something his palace walls had perfectly hidden from him, fostering a profound sense of empathy and vulnerability, I imagine.
And then the ultimate reality check. The corpse. The finality.
The corpse symbolized death, the unavoidable and ultimate end of life for everyone, regardless of status or wealth. He saw a body being prepared for cremation, lifeless and decaying. This prompted deep internal questioning about the meaning of existence itself.
Like, what's the point?
Exactly. If life inevitably culminates in decay and death, what is its purpose? Why are we born only to suffer and eventually perish? This existential crisis, for a sheltered prince who had known only life and pleasure, must have been utterly overwhelming, forcing him to confront the fundamental impermanence of everything he held dear.
So he'd seen old age, sickness, death, all these profound forms of suffering, or dukkha, as it's known in Buddhism. But the fourth sight offered a glimpse of something else entirely, a potential answer or a path forward.
Yes, the ascetic monk. This figure, encountered amidst the previous distressing sights, was stripped of all worldly ties, possessing nothing but a bowl and robes, yet exuding a profound sense of inner peace and serenity.
A different kind of response.
A totally different response. This monk, by his very presence, showed Siddhartha that a true quest for meaning and liberation was possible, a path towards understanding and freedom from the suffering he had just witnessed. This monk represented not just an alternative way of life, but a potential future path for himself, a vision of someone who had found a different kind of peace, a tranquility that transcended material comforts or physical decay.
So these four sights collectively provided the critical, psychological, and philosophical impetus for him to leave the palace. Siddhartha now directly experienced dukkha, this fundamental suffering or unsatisfactoriness of life, in a way he never could have conceptualized before. And he was utterly determined to find its cause and its solution. It wasn't just intellectual curiosity. It was an urgent, deeply personal, existential mission that had seized his entire being. And this brings us to what is perhaps one of the most radical and certainly one of the most celebrated acts in religious history, the Great Renunciation. At the age of 29, Siddhartha made the audacious decision to leave absolutely everything behind.
This act was a profound and radical break, not only from the religious and social structures of his era, but also from every expectation placed upon him as a prince and heir. He literally walked away from the security of the palace walls, his regal identity, his family, his wife, Yasodhara, and his newborn son, Rahula.
He had a son.
Yes, a very young son. He left his comfortable, luxurious life and all worldly attachments. It wasn't just a physical departure from the external world. It also signified a profound internal detachment from his own sense of self as a prince and from all the desires and expectations that came with that identity. He was shedding an entire life to seek a deeper truth.
So he's out in the world, now a wandering ascetic, seeking answers to the ultimate questions. He doesn't just immediately find them, though, does he? He explores various existing spiritual paths, much like many sincere seekers do today.
That's right. His initial approach was to seek instruction from the most renowned rishis and spiritual meditators of the time. These were highly respected teachers, and from them he diligently learned various mental disciplines, meditation techniques, and philosophical frameworks prevalent in the era.
He really threw himself into it.
Completely. He immersed himself completely in their teachings, practicing with great dedication, often reaching very high states of meditative absorption.
And were these established teachers, with their ancient wisdom, able to provide the fundamental answers he was looking for? Why didn't he simply follow their paths to enlightenment?
Unfortunately, no. While valuable in developing his mind and discipline, their teachings, often rooted in specific rituals, dogmatic beliefs, or seeking union with the Supreme Self, ultimately failed to satisfy him.
Something was missing.
Something fundamental, yes. He found them insufficient because they couldn't fully explain the root causes of human suffering or provide a definitive, universal path to its complete cessation. He realized that while they offered temporary peace or heightened states of consciousness, they didn't penetrate to the fundamental questions that arose from his encounter with the four sights. There was still a fundamental craving, a subtle attachment that they didn't fully address.
And that's when he turned to a completely different extreme, something most of us would find truly unfathomable today: severe asceticism. This feels like the opposite pole from his life in the palace.
It was indeed. Convinced that liberation lay through extreme purification and the complete subjugation of the body, he joined a group of ascetics and embarked on a path of severe self-mortification.
What did that involve, like practically?
This meant extreme fasting, sometimes consuming only a single grain of rice a day, enduring thirst, exposing himself to harsh elements, and engaging in severe physical torture, like holding his breath for long periods. The belief was that by completely denying the body's needs and desires, by pushing it to its absolute limits, the spirit would be liberated, refined, and pure insight would arise.
What's fascinating here is that even these extreme methods, which seem like the ultimate form of spiritual discipline, also failed him. This must have been a profound realization.
It was a crucial turning point. After years of this extreme practice, Siddhartha realized that these methods severely damaged his physical health, weakening his body to the point where it obscured his mental clarity rather than enhancing it. He became so emaciated he was literally a skeleton.
Near death, basically.
Absolutely. He was on the verge of death. It was then, after accepting a bowl of milk rice from a village girl, Sujata, that he came to a profound and crucial insight. Neither extreme indulgence, the life he had known in the palace, nor extreme deprivation, the path of severe asceticism he has just practiced, led to genuine spiritual liberation or enlightenment.
Neither extreme.
Either. This pivotal realization birthed the concept of the middle way, in Pali, Majjhima Patipada. It's about avoiding both extremes and finding a balanced, skillful path that supports clarity and well-being, recognizing the body as a vehicle for practice, not an obstacle or an object of indulgence.
So, after years of intense searching, trying these radically different avenues from princely luxury to extreme deprivation, and realizing that neither was the answer, he found his own unique path. This led to the most pivotal moment, the culmination of his journey: his enlightenment under the Bodhi tree.
Exactly. At the age of 35, after 6 years of relentless searching and rigorous practice, Siddhartha sat down in deep meditation under a large fig tree, now famously known as the Bodhi tree, in Bodh Gaya. This moment is universally considered the most important turning point in all of Buddhist history.
The absolute crux.
It was the culmination of his entire arduous quest, a moment of profound, irreversible transformation. He resolved not to rise until he had attained full enlightenment.
And what exactly was this enlightenment? Was it just a burst of intellectual understanding, a sudden download of information?
It was far more profound than that. The enlightenment he experienced was not merely a mental understanding or a sudden intellectual realization. It was a direct, intuitive, and experiential knowing of the very essence of existence.
A knowing, not just thinking.
Precisely. It involved penetrating the deepest nature of reality, seeing things as they truly are, free from the distortions of craving, aversion, and delusion. It was a complete and utter transformation of his perception, his being, and his relationship with reality. He saw the interconnectedness of all phenomena, the cycle of suffering and rebirth, and crucially the path to liberation. He became fully awakened.
And it was during this profound process, this deep meditative state, that he discovered what became known as the Four Noble Truths. These are truly the bedrock, the very foundational principles of Buddhist philosophy, aren't they?
They are, absolutely. During this transformative experience over the course of an entire night, Siddhartha apprehended these four fundamental truths, which provide both a diagnosis of human suffering and the prescription for its cessation.
Yeah, what are they?
First, he understood that the nature of life is inherently unsatisfactory, or dukkha. Second, he identified that the origin of this suffering is craving, desire, and ignorance. Third, he realized with utter certainty that suffering can indeed cease by eliminating this craving. And fourth, he saw that the practical path to this cessation is what is known as the Eightfold Path.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this enlightenment fundamentally transformed him. He went from being the seeker, Prince Siddhartha, to the Buddha, the awakened one.
Precisely. He had not only comprehended the true nature of life and liberation for himself, but had also become a teacher, an enlightened being capable of articulating and guiding others to overcome their own suffering and achieve this same profound understanding. This was the birth of Buddhism, not just as a personal philosophy, but as a teachable, accessible path for all who wish to follow.
So let's unpack these four noble truths because they truly are the fundamental teachings of Buddhism, acting like a medical diagnosis and treatment plan for the human condition. They're designed to define human existential suffering and provide the means to cope with it. And it's vital to stress, these are not simplistic statements you just read off a list.
No, they are profound philosophical insights that demand deep contemplation and experiential understanding. The first truth, dukkha, is often translated as suffering, but that's a limited translation. It encompasses far more.
It's broader.
Much broader. It includes all forms of unsatisfactoriness, impermanence, discontent, stress, and inherent unease. It's the subtle feeling that things are not quite right, even when they seem good on the surface.
So it's not just acute pain, like stubbing your toe, but this pervasive sense of unease or fundamental unsatisfactoriness that permeates all existence, like a low hum of discontent.
Exactly. Humans experience a constant state of unease in the face of life's ever-changing and transient nature. Think about it. Physical pain is dukkha. The sadness of loss is dukkha. But also the fleeting nature of joy, the anxiety of holding on to something good because you know it won't last. That too is dukkha.
Not even good things.
Even pleasurable experiences are dukkha because they are impermanent, and our attachment to them causes suffering when they inevitably change or disappear. You could even draw a parallel here to the Western philosophical concept of existential angst, that deep, often subconscious anxiety about the inherent impermanence or even apparent meaninglessness of existence.
That feeling of being unmoored.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The fundamental dis-ease of being. The radical insight here isn't just that life has pain, but that everything, even joy, even pleasure, is inherently unsatisfactory because it's impermanent. The profound nugget. True suffering isn't just pain. It's the clinging to the fleeting.
That makes a lot of sense. So if that's the problem, what's the cause? That's the second truth, samudaya.
The second truth, samudaya, precisely identifies the source of suffering as craving, or tanha, which means thirst or intense desire. This craving manifests in three primary ways: craving for sensual pleasure, craving for becoming, for existence, for things to continue, and craving for non-becoming, for annihilation, for things to end.
So wanting things to last, or even wanting things to stop.
Yes, and this craving is rooted in our fundamental ignorance, avidya, which is a misunderstanding of the true nature of reality, specifically misunderstanding impermanence, suffering, and non-self.
And how do these insatiable desires, this craving, inevitably lead to suffering? Can you elaborate on that connection?
It's because human desires for possession, for continuation, for pleasure, for becoming, or even for non-becoming are endless and inherently unfulfillable in a permanent sense. When these desires are thwarted, or when the objects of our desires change, decay, or disappear, we inevitably experience dissatisfaction, frustration, disappointment, and suffering.
The wanting never ends.
Exactly. We're constantly chasing something that, by its very nature, cannot provide lasting, ultimate satisfaction because everything is impermanent. It's the cycle of wanting, getting, losing, and wanting again that fuels our discontent.
Okay, so we've got the diagnosis, suffering, and its cause are craving driven by ignorance. Now for the good news, and this is the truly optimistic core of Buddhism. The third truth, nirodha, tells us that suffering can actually cease. And this leads to the ultimate state of nirvana.
This is indeed the profound and hopeful assertion of Buddhism. The third truth states unequivocally that suffering can indeed be ended, completely and utterly. This cessation of suffering, this liberation from the cycle of discontent, is what is known as nirvana.
Nirvana. It's a famous word, but what does it actually mean?
It's important to understand that nirvana is not a heaven or a specific place you go to after death. It's a profound state of being, a transformation of consciousness achieved in this very life.
Achieved now.
Yes, potentially. Yeah. It's often metaphorically likened to the extinguishing of a fire, but not an annihilation of the individual. Rather, it's the complete cessation of the fires of greed, hatred, and delusion.
Putting out the flames of wanting and ignorance.
Exactly. Blowing out the flames of attachment and aversion that fuel suffering. It's a state of profound peace, liberation, and clarity, where all craving and ignorance have been extinguished, resulting in true freedom from the endless cycle of dissatisfaction. The truly profound insight of nirvana is that it's not an escape from life, but an awakening within it, a state of profound clarity and freedom achieved by extinguishing the very desires that fuel our suffering, not by disappearing into some ethereal heaven.
And finally, the fourth truth, Magga, which gives us the practical solution, the actual path to achieve this cessation of suffering.
Yes, the fourth truth points to the concrete method, the specific roadmap for liberation from suffering, the Eightfold Path. This raises an important question for us and for you, the listener. So what exactly is this Eightfold Path, and how does one walk it in a practical sense?
That's the practical blueprint, isn't it? The Eightfold Path isn't some abstract theoretical concept. It's presented as Buddhism's comprehensive practical manifesto, a guide for how to live and truly develop yourself.
It truly is. It meticulously outlines the necessary elements for an individual's moral, mental, and spiritual development. It's a holistic journey encompassing three interconnected pillars: wisdom, panna, ethical conduct, sila, and mental discipline, samadhi.
Wisdom, ethics, mind training.
It's a good summary. And it's crucial to understand it's not a sequential ladder where you master one step before moving to the next. Rather, all 8 components are practiced simultaneously and support each other, creating a synergistic path towards liberation.
So let's break down each of these 8 components in detail, starting with right view. What does it truly mean to have right view?
Right view, or samyagdaya, is the foundational understanding, the wise perspective. It means grasping the true nature of the world and life as taught by the Four Noble Truths.
Seeing things clearly.
Seeing reality clearly, yes. Understanding that life inherently involves suffering, understanding its causes, craving, and ignorance, and understanding how to overcome them. It's not about blind faith, but about gaining a correct conceptual and experiential framework for reality, recognizing the principles of karma, cause and effect, and the impermanence of all things. Without this initial right understanding, the other aspects of the path can be, well, misguided.
Then we move to right intention, the second component. This seems to be about the motivation behind our actions, our inner direction.
That's right. Right. Intention, samyak sakalpa, is about purifying the mind of ill will, of craving, and of harmful thoughts. It's about consciously aiming for actions and thoughts that are rooted in renunciation, letting go of attachment, compassion, karuna, and kindness, metta.
Compassion and kindness.
Yes, fostering benevolence towards all beings. It's the mental resolve to live in a way that is beneficial, not harmful, both to oneself and to others. It's about ensuring your inner compass is always pointing towards liberation and kindness.
And right speech. We all know how powerful words can be for good or ill. This feels very practical.
Indeed. Right speech, samyak vak, involves actively avoiding falsehoods, divisive speech, gossip, slander, harsh words, and idle chatter.
Basically, don't lie, don't cause trouble with words.
Exactly. It's about speaking truthfully, kindly, helpfully, and at the right time. The Buddha emphasized that words have immense power, capable of building or destroying, healing or harming. Therefore, practicing right speech means considering the impact of our words before we utter them, ensuring they contribute to harmony and understanding, not conflict or confusion.
Next, right action. This sounds like it directly relates to our physical conduct, what we actually do.
Absolutely. Right action, samyak karmanta, is about abstaining from unwholesome physical actions. This includes refraining from harming living beings, stealing, and sexual misconduct. It's about acting in ways that are physically beneficial and non-harmful, embodying the principle of nonviolence, ahimsa.
So ethical behavior in action.
Yes. It's not just about avoiding negative actions, but also about cultivating wholesome ones, living in a way that respects the lives and property of others.
Then right livelihood. This is interesting because it brings the spiritual path directly into the practical realm of daily work, how you make a living.
Precisely. Right livelihood, samyakaja, means choosing a profession or a way of earning a living that aligns with ethical principles and does not cause harm to others. This would exclude, for example, professions that involve selling weapons, poisons, intoxicating substances, or those that exploit others, such as maybe unfair business practices today.
So your job shouldn't hurt people.
Basically, yes. The idea is that your means of sustenance should not contradict your spiritual aspirations. Your work should contribute to the well-being of society, not its detriment.
And right effort. This one sounds like it requires active, continuous mental participation. It's not passive.
It absolutely does. Right effort, samyak vayama, involves diligently working to cleanse the mind of unwholesome thoughts, those that lead to suffering, like anger, greed, and delusion, and to actively cultivate and maintain wholesome ones, such as compassion, generosity, and wisdom.
Like mental gardening.
That's a great analogy. It's an active mental purification, a constant vigilance to prevent negative states from arising, abandon those that have arisen, and foster positive ones, sustaining them once they've been cultivated. It's the persistent exertion needed to walk the path.
Moving into the mental discipline aspect, we have right mindfulness. This is a concept that has gained a lot of traction even in secular contexts today. Mindfulness meditation and all that.
It certainly has, and for good reason, right? Mindfulness, samyak spanti, is about maintaining a clear, non-judgmental, and present moment awareness of our experience. It's observing the mind and body as they are, moment by moment, without cling or aversion.
Paying attention without judging.
Exactly. This involves being aware of our bodily sensations, our feelings, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral, our mental states, thoughts, emotions, and the phenomena that arise and pass away. It's cultivating a sustained, open awareness that allows us to see things as they truly are without being swept away by reactivity.
And finally, right concentration, the culmination of the mental development.
Right. Concentration, samyak samadhi, is about developing the ability to focus the mind deeply and continuously, primarily through meditation practices like samatha, calm abiding, and vipassana, insight meditation. It's cultivating a state of focused attention that leads to profound mental tranquility and stability.
Getting the mind steady.
Right. And ultimately to the profound insights necessary for liberation. When the mind is concentrated, it becomes a powerful tool for penetrating the true nature of reality, seeing impermanence, suffering, and non-self directly.
So looking at all 8 of these components, it's incredibly clear how interconnected they are. It's not just a checklist, but a symbiotic living system, each supporting and enhancing the others, like spokes on a wheel.
Exactly. That's a classic image. These paths are deeply interconnected, each supporting and reinforcing the others. For example, right view informs right intention, which in turn shapes right speech and right action.
Which need right effort to maintain.
Exactly. And right effort sustains right mindfulness, which is essential for right concentration, which then deepens right view. They contribute not just to individual spiritual growth and liberation from suffering, but also, through the collective practice of its adherence, to a profound spiritual transformation of society, fostering a more compassionate, ethical, and wise world. It truly is a comprehensive and dynamic system for living a life of purpose and peace.
And this leads us to Buddhism's enduring impact. Because Buddhist teachings weren't revolutionary just for individual salvation, they had a profound and undeniable effect on the social structure and the very nature of religion itself in ancient India.
This is one of the most critical aspects of Buddhism's historical significance, and a point often understated. Unlike the strict Hindu caste divisions that pervaded society, which dictated a person's worth and destiny from birth, Buddhism advocated for universal equality.
Everyone is equal.
The Buddha explicitly asserted that everyone, regardless of their birth, their caste, their gender, or their social standing, possessed the inherent potential for enlightenment. Merit was earned through conduct and understanding, not inherited status.
That must have been utterly radical, even dangerous for its time. It completely upended the prevailing social norms, challenging the very foundation of power.
It was profoundly revolutionary. This radical emphasis on equality was pivotal, as it allowed women and individuals from traditionally marginalized communities or lower castes to join the Buddhist monastic community, the Sangha, to become monks and nuns, and to actively pursue the path to liberation.
Women, too. That was unusual then.
Highly unusual. This was in stark contrast to the prevailing social norms, where their spiritual access and social mobility were severely limited, often entirely prohibited by their birth. The Buddhist Sangha was one of the first truly egalitarian spiritual communities, a living testament to his message of liberation for all, regardless of societal labels. The profound nugget here: the Buddha didn't just offer spiritual liberation, he launched a social revolution by declaring that inherent worth and spiritual potential were universal, not determined by birth. This was profoundly subversive to the existing order.
And beyond challenging social hierarchy, he also shifted the very focus of religion itself, didn't he? It wasn't about appeasing a divine creator or performing elaborate rituals dictated by priests.
What's truly fascinating here is that the Buddha's teachings did not emphasize a divine creator god or elaborate priest-mediated rituals. Instead, the entire focus centered on the individual's direct journey to understand their own mind, to directly experience reality for themselves, and to liberate themselves from craving and ignorance through personal insight and practice.
It's about looking inward.
Exactly. This was a profound shift from external deities and ceremonial acts to an internal, experiential, and highly rational path.
So it became a deeply personal quest, an internal transformation, where the individual was truly empowered.
Precisely. This radical shift to an internal experiential path focused on ethics, mental discipline, and personal insight made Buddhism incredibly accessible and empowering to anyone willing to undertake the practice. The Buddha's teaching was often summarized as hipasako, meaning come and see or come and verify.
Come and see for yourself.
Yes. It was an invitation to test his teachings through one's own experience, rather than blindly accepting them on faith or authority. This offered agency to the individual, inviting them to look within for the answers, rather than relying on external authorities or complex exclusionary rituals. This is truly groundbreaking for its time and continues to resonate deeply in our modern world, where so many seek authentic personal experiences of meaning. The profound nugget. Buddhism offered a path of self-discovery and transformation, emphasizing personal insight over blind faith or elaborate ceremonies. It was a call to look within, a truly democratic spiritual path.
What an incredible deep dive into the origins of Buddhism and the truly transformative journey of Siddhartha Gautama. We've seen how his profound search for meaning led to insights that were not only deeply spiritual but also revolutionary, challenging the very fabric of ancient Indian society and revolutionizing not just individual spirituality but societal norms.
Indeed. From the rigid social structures of ancient India and the spiritual dissatisfaction of the people, to the prince who encountered suffering head-on, and then to the liberating principles of the Four Noble Truths and the practical guidance of the Eightfold Path.
It's quite a story.
It really is. Buddhism offered a deeply personal and accessible approach to life's challenges. The emphasis on inner wisdom and ethical conduct, rather than rigid dogma, was truly groundbreaking. And its spirit of equality was far ahead of its time, a genuine societal revolution hidden within a spiritual quest.
It's amazing how a philosophy born in response to ancient societal pressures continues to offer such practical and profound tools for navigating our own complex and often chaotic modern world, where so many of us are still searching for meaning, peace, and freedom from our own forms of existential suffering.
Absolutely. The wisdom contained within these ancient teachings remains profoundly relevant, perhaps even more so in an age of constant external stimulation and distraction.
So, as you reflect on this deep dive, consider, in a world saturated with external distractions and instant gratification, how might the ancient concept of the middle way, avoiding extremes of indulgence and deprivation, or the practice of right mindfulness, cultivating non-judgmental present moment awareness, offer a quiet but powerful revolution in your own daily pursuit of peace and well-being? What insights can you glean from Siddhartha's journey and apply to your own path of understanding and contentment?